Ethan met Sophie at a mutual friend's birthday party. From the first moment he saw her, something in his heart changed. She was laughing with friends, her eyes sparkling with joy, and he could not help but stare. Summoning his courage, he walked over and said, "Hello." Sophie turned, smiled, and the awkward tension melted instantly. "Hi, I am Sophie," she said, holding out her hand. "I am Ethan," he replied, shaking it, feeling the warmth of her palm. "Nice to meet you." They talked about simple things, at first music, favorite movies, and books they loved. Ethan discovered that Sophie had a fascination with art and storytelling, and Sophie learned that Ethan loved to travel and explore hidden places in the city. Their conversation flowed easily, and even when there were pauses, it never felt uncomfortable. Ethan noticed how she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and how her eyes lit up when she smiled. Sophie noticed the way Ethan listened carefully and nodded thoughtfully to everything she said. It was a small connection at first, but it felt meaningful. Over the next few weeks, they exchanged messages and calls. Each text made their hearts race. Ethan shared his dreams of traveling to distant countries, and Sophie spoke about her love for painting and sketching. There were small misunderstandings like missed messages or misread tones, but they quickly learned to communicate honestly and openly. One evening, Ethan invited Sophie to a quiet cafe near the river. They sat by the window watching the city lights reflecting on the water. "I like seeing the city like this," Sophie said, sipping her coffee. "It feels calm, almost magical." Ethan smiled. "I feel the same way. It's like everything slows down when you are with someone who makes you feel safe." They laughed over silly childhood stories. Sophie shared how she once tried to bake a cake for her little brother and accidentally used salt instead of sugar. Ethan admitted he had once gotten lost in his own neighborhood while trying to impress a friend. These small moments created trust and closeness between them. As the evening went on, Ethan suggested a walk along the river. They strolled quietly, the sound of water and distant music from street performers around them. Ethan felt nervous but finally said, "I really enjoy being with you, Sophie. I feel like we can talk about anything." Sophie smiled, her cheeks turning pink. "I feel the same, Ethan. It's rare to find someone who understands you so easily." But life was not always easy. Ethan faced a big challenge at work. A project he had poured his heart into was criticized by his manager, and he felt frustrated and exhausted. He began withdrawing, spending more time at his desk and less time messaging Sophie. Sophie noticed and felt hurt. She wondered if he cared as much as he said he did. One evening, she sent him a message. "Are you okay? I feel like we haven't really talked all week." Ethan stared at the screen. He wanted to reply but couldn't find the right words. Finally, he typed, "I am sorry I have been stressed. I didn't mean to ignore you." Sophie replied quickly, "I understand, but I miss you." They met the next day at a park. Ethan explained everything, and Sophie shared her feelings. Tears were shed, hugs exchanged, and they realized that love required patience, empathy, and understanding. Slowly, they rebuilt their connection. In the following weeks, they shared more adventures. They visited art galleries, took long walks through quiet streets, and discovered hidden cafes. Ethan surprised Sophie with a small book of poems she loved, showing her that he remembered the little things she cherished. Sophie in turn made him breakfast one morning and left a note that read, "You are doing great, I believe in you." Their bond grew stronger with each shared moment. One weekend they went hiking in the hills outside the city. The path was steep and rocky, and Ethan helped Sophie carefully over the rough spots. They laughed at each stumble and supported each other along the way. At the top, they sat silently looking at the view of the valley below. Sophie leaned against Ethan and whispered, "I am glad we are here together." Ethan looked at the horizon, thinking about all the times he had been alone before and how meeting Sophie had changed everything. "I am too," he said softly. "Moments like this make all the struggles worth it." One day, Sophie suggested a spontaneous road trip to a nearby town she had always wanted to explore. They packed light, brought snacks, and sang along to songs in the car. The laughter and playful arguments about which route to take made the trip unforgettable. Ethan looked at Sophie while she was laughing and thought, "I have never felt this happy before. This is what it feels like to be home." They stopped at a small lake and rented a rowboat. Sophie clumsily tried to row, and Ethan laughed, helping her steady the boat. The water reflected the sky, and the gentle wind brushed their faces. They talked about hopes, dreams, and fears. Sophie admitted she sometimes worried about the future. Ethan held her hand. "No matter what happens, I will be here with you," he said. But even the strongest relationships face conflicts. A misunderstanding over career ambitions and future plans led to tension. They did not speak for a week, Both reflected on their feelings, their fears, and their hopes. Ethan realized that he had been too focused on work and had neglected the emotional connection with Sophie. Sophie realized that she had been impatient and quick to assume the worst. Finally, they met again in the park, where they first confessed their feelings. Rain fell gently, and they shared an umbrella. Ethan took Sophie's hand and said, "We are not perfect, but I don't want to imagine my life without you." Sophie smiled through the rain. "I feel the same. I don't want to give up on us." They walked slowly, sharing stories, dreams, and laughter. Every small gesture, every honest word built the foundation of a relationship that would continue to grow. They learned that love was not only about passion and excitement, but also about patience, forgiveness, and the quiet moments that make life meaningful. In the following months, Ethan and Sophie faced more challenges, family disagreements, career opportunities that required difficult decisions, and personal fears. Each time they relied on trust and communication. They discovered that compromise and empathy were just as important as affection and romance. They spent quiet evenings cooking together, reading books, or simply sitting on the balcony watching the stars. Ethan often noticed the small things Sophie did, the way she hummed while drawing or how she arranged flowers in the kitchen. Sophie noticed the way Ethan listened to the world around him, noticing details most people ignored. By the end of the year, Ethan and Sophie had celebrated joys, faced challenges, and grown together. They knew there would be more obstacles ahead, but they were confident that together they could overcome anything. Their story was not perfect, but it was theirs, and that made it beautiful. As they sat by the river one evening watching the sunset, Ethan whispered, "I love this life we are building together." Sophie leaned her head on his shoulder. "Me too. And I know it will only get better because we are facing it together." They watched the sun disappear behind the horizon, hand in hand, hearts full of hope, knowing that love in all its complexity was worth every moment, every struggle, and every joy.